collectors of knowledge. My name is Kiri Callaghan and you're watching Kiriosity, the vlog where we get nerdy on geek culture. Today, Disney's Alice in Wonderland Through the Looking Glass is released in theaters, and while I will personally not be spending my money on a ticket, today seemed like a great day to talk about some of the behind-the-scenes facts of the original franchise that got us here. Now, if it hasn't been clear to you quite yet, I'm a huge Alice in Wonderland fan. The stories were a giant part of my childhood, and despite all the different renditions that I've seen in regards to film adaptations, I've never found one that quite seemed to land on mark for me. Books, yes. Video games, totally. But film, it always seemed to lack something. A huge part of what makes the classic Alice is the narration and how it's told. So if you try to port that directly to a film, you immediately lose all of that descriptive narration, and it kind of tends to fall a little bit flat. For instance, this story was originally told for Alice Little and her sisters. Alice was the daughter of Henry Little, the dean of Christ Church College in Oxford, where Lewis Carroll taught mathematics. At the time, it was custom for employees of the college to live on campus. So after meeting Alice and her older brother, Lewis Carroll became acquainted with the entire family fairly quickly. Now, when Carroll first told the story of Alice, it was not with the intent to become a children's author. It was to entertain the little girls on a boating trip up the Thames in 1862. But just the way that your little sister or your niece or your daughter or what have you watched Frozen 1,000,000 times, the little girls begged and begged for Carroll to tell them the tale again and again. So, eventually, Carroll wrapped it up into a novel called Alice's Adventures Underground and presented the novel to Alice as an early Christmas present in 1864. When he finally did go through the intention of publishing, he went through a few other titles, including Alice's Hour in Elfland and Alice Among the Fairies. When he self-published Alice in Wonderland a year later, it had doubled in length and now included characters that we consider to be staples of Alice's world, including the Mad Hatter and the Cheshire Cat. Most of the characters in these books were actually based on people and experiences in the children's lives. So what we consider the endearing nonsense that is pretty commonplace to Carroll's work would have had the little children in peals of laughter. For instance, when the Mock Turtle says he receives lessons in drawing and sketching and fainting in coils from an old codger eel that used to come once a week, the littles would have recognized their old art tutor. Alice in Wonderland is chock full of almost nothing but inside jokes very specific to the littles. In fact, in Alice in Wonderland's second and third chapters, Carroll even alluded to that first boating trip by casting himself and others present in the caucus race. Alice, of course, was represented by Alice. Her sister Lorena became the Lory. Her sister Edith became the Eaglet, Reverend Robinson Duckworth became the Duck, and Lewis Carroll himself was cast as the Dodo. A popular theory surrounding why Carroll cast himself as the Dodo is that 1, his real name was Charles Dodgson, and he spoke with a terrible stammer. Mind you, this theory is completely substantiated, and if I could just throw out personal opinion there, considering he was incredibly self-conscious about his stammer to the point where he forsook his dream of becoming a priest because he didn't think he could get through a sermon without stammering, I find it highly unlikely he would have poked fun at himself by making that the reason of why he cast himself as the Dodo. I mean, it's possible, I just find it kind of unlikely. When the book wasn't incorporating the Littles' adventures, it was poking fun at the adult world around them. Carroll mocked the political caucus for its lack of clarity and decisiveness, and made several satirical jabs at 19th century innovations in math, such as imaginary numbers. For instance, riddles like, "Why is a raven like a writing desk?" were reflections on the increasing abstraction that was going on in mathematics. It was never originally meant to be a real riddle, but rather pit two incredibly unrelated things together and pretend they had anything in common or any logic. Carroll was a very conservative mathematician and found new forms of math completely absurd, especially compared to his beloved algebra and Euclidean geometry. So what really makes Alice in Wonderland what it is the satirical narrative, the wordplay, and the inside jokes. Because if you look at Alice as just a story, a timeline of plot point to plot point, there's really not a lot going on. Alice is just a tourist in Wonderland remarking on how strange everything is around her. She doesn't have any character development, she doesn't have really any goals or motive. Unlike Dorothy and Oz, she has no real drive to get home. So how does something about nothing and nonsense stand the test of time and become a household name? Branding. Lewis Carroll was one of the first authors working with manufacturers to create related products. He was all about the tie-ins. He designed a postage stamp case with Alice's image, allowed her image to adorn cookie tins and other products. For readers eager and curious to learn more about the origins of the book, he produced a facsimile of the original manuscript, which was pretty rare for an author back then. He even made shorter versions for his younger readers. His business savvy was way ahead of his time, and he was practicing franchise marketing decades before Disney was ever even founded. And it worked! The sequel, Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There, was sold out within 7 weeks of its publication. And Alice in Wonderland, since its first publication, has been translated into 176 languages and has never been out of print. Dang, marketing? What's a story that stuck with you over time? Let me know the what and the why in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and of course, until next time, stay curious.